After the Canadian government announced plans to investigate 2 Chinese police stations in Quebec, China accused Canada of smearing its reputation. However, the Chinese government did not say anything about the existence of police stations, or whether the Chinese government runs them. When it comes to intellectual property, the Chinese Communist Party has been eating our lunch for many years, across both parties' administrations. That's the statement of a House representative, after knowing the Chinese regime has stolen hundreds of billions worth of the US intellectual property. Gloomy days might be waiting ahead for the CCP. A Chinese expert predicts that China's economy could go back 20 years, while coups and assassinations may increase within the party. Concerns are rising among Chinese residents over the influenza A, as infected patients show similar symptoms to the coronavirus. Chinese National Assembly delegate offers to provide free cemeteries and urns. Why do people laugh?
On Friday, March 10th, China accused Canada of smearing its reputation. The response came after Canada reported they were investigating 2 Chinese police stations in Quebec. At a daily briefing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Mao Ning said that Canada should stop sensationalizing and hyping the matter and stop attacks and smears on China. According to the AP, she did not say anything about the existence of police stations or whether the Chinese government runs them. A day before Mao Ning's speech, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police said it was investigating allegations that 2 centers in Montreal and Brossard were being used as police stations. Reuters reports that the Chinese state backs the 2 centers to intimidate or harass Chinese Canadians. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police Quebec previously identified 2 such police stations in Ontario and British Columbia. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said, "We've known about the presence of Chinese police stations across the country for many months, and we are making sure that the RCMP is following up on it and that our intelligence services takes it seriously." Beijing has previously defined overseas outposts as service stations for overseas Chinese who need help with administrative tasks, such as renewing a Chinese driver's license. Usually, an embassy or consulate performs such civic services. However, the Spanish human rights group Safeguard Defenders said the police stations were used to harass, threaten, intimidate, and force targets to return to China for persecution. China has many such police stations around the globe, including in the UK and the US. During a hearing on Capitol Hill on March 8th, an expert estimated that the Chinese Communist Party has stolen $600 billion worth of U.S. intellectual property. Witnesses testified that the CCP's thievery has been systematic, deliberate, and obvious. They described the regime's method as a whole-society approach. According to William Avinya, founder and CEO of the Avinya Group, China uses intelligence services, science and technology investments, academic collaboration, research partnerships, joint ventures, front companies, mergers and acquisitions, and outright theft via insider threats and cyber intrusions. The CEO added that China would steal anything related to intellectual property, namely aerospace, deep-sea technology, biotechnology, information technology, manufacturing, clean energy, electric battery technology, and DNA genomics. These are just part of the list. Avinya took the made-in-China C929 airplane as an example of a product built entirely on stolen technology. However, China succeeded because of loopholes in U.S. patent laws, and Chinese firms were quick to take advantage. Often, their main tactic goes like this. In some cases, with the assistance of state laws that forbid non-complete agreements, Chinese corporations would steal American inventions and ideas, patent the work, and then sue the U.S. company that created it for patent infringement. Joint ventures between Chinese and American businesses have also made intellectual property theft possible. Upon witnesses' testimonies, Representative Ben Klein said, "When it comes to intellectual property, the Chinese Communist Party has been eating our lunch for many years across both parties' administration." He then corrected himself. "I think it needs to be changed to, they've been stealing our lunch money and parading in front of us."
On March 5th, outgoing Premier Li Keqiang set an economic growth target of 5% in the final work report of his term. This is the lowest growth target that China's regime has set for nearly 30 years. According to Xin Tengren, Li Keqiang mentioned in the report that China's economic growth foundation needs to be strengthened. Private investment and private businesses are expected to be volatile. Li added that small, medium, and micro businesses and industrial and commercial production facilities face many difficulties. Job stability is difficult, and the financial conflicts between revenues and expenditures are relatively large. Li Keqiang has repeatedly mentioned stability in his report. He emphasized that price stability, employment stability, and supply chain stability are needed. Xie Tian, a professor at the Aiken School of Business at the University of South Carolina, said China's regime faces many challenges. One of those challenges is real estate. Foreign investors no longer want to invest in Chinese real estate, and China currently has 600 million unsold houses. The bad state of China's real estate market is unprecedented in human history. Xie added that the unemployment rate among young people in China is more than reported. In particular, the unemployment rate after the Lunar New Year is very high. Xie thinks the unemployment rate in China will increase even faster because many foreign businesses are withdrawing from China. The Aiken professor believes that in such a problematic situation, Xi Jinping will face more pressure, internal conflicts within the CCP will get worse, there will even be coups, and cases of various assassinations will not decrease but also increase. In addition, Xie said that the US and Europe's increased blockade of China's regime would take the Chinese economy back 20 years.
The flu epidemic still rages across China, and many people are infected. The symptoms are severe in many confirmed patients. Public opinion questioned that after the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, announced the victory in pandemic prevention, it continued to cover up the pandemic by blaming influenza A. An 82-year-old from Xinjiang City, Henan, had the underlying illness and died of severe pneumonia after contracting influenza A in February. On March 8th, his daughter told Daji Yuan that her father was the first to be infected with influenza A during the epidemic in February. On the 24th, his condition rapidly developed into white lung. She said it developed from 35% white lung to 95% and finally merged with myocarditis. In only 5 days, my father left us. Her father tested positive for COVID last December and recovered with treatment. In this footage, a mother in Anhui said, "My little friend was suspected of type A influenza and was sent home from kindergarten after 10 a.m. with a temperature of 39.5 degrees Celsius. It's terrible. I feel uncomfortable." Many primary schools have kept children out of school since mid-February before the onset of fever symptoms. A Shandong patient told Nutang Ren, "3 people in my family contracted the type A flu and went for an injection collectively. In their son's class today, 15 people asked for leave and 10 from his sister's class. After 11 a.m., we went for an injection and found many people in the clinic. So many infusion bottles are on the table, it seems they haven't had time to take them away." A citizen from Zhejiang said, "I saw many children in the hospital with similar symptoms. I got the antigen test report and was diagnosed with type A flu. Those with children at home, pay attention. They are out of stock for oseltamivir." A Tanjian local said on March 5th, the outpatient clinic of Tajian Children's Hospital hit a new high. March 5th is the 17th day of this peak, and there's still no sign of decline. On March 6th, the number of patients admitted to the Children's Hospital was still jumping up and down by 10,000. On March 7th, Junyou Wu, the China CDC chief expert of epidemiology, said that the number of visits to fever clinics nationwide on March 2nd was 304,000. The true data is unknown, but Wu Zunyu said that the flu is still rising and is expected to continue for several weeks. Meanwhile, the deputy head of the surgical department of Zhuzhou People's Hospital posted a video saying that, as a rule, influenza epidemics usually last more than a month. However, there will be more changes because the body's immunity has been weakened by COVID infection. Finally, he emphasized that influenza A can cause serious complications such as myocarditis and white lung. Many Chinese doubted and questioned the link between influenza A and COVID. In this self-recorded video, a man said the symptoms between influenza A and COVID are coincidental. Due to unclear government data and information, the outside world cannot know the true situation of the epidemic. However, recently Beijing, Shaanxi, Henan, Nanning, and other major provinces and cities have issued notices to prevent and control influenza A. Outsiders speculate that the actual severity may far exceed the number announced.
According to Vision Times, the Chinese government's 2 sessions are being held and the delegates' proposals are of great interest. A National People's Congress delegate offered to provide free cemeteries and urns for the people, making Chinese netizens laugh at its impossibility, as they also wondered why the Chinese suffer so much right now. According to Jimu News, Pan Baochun, an NPC delegate, recently suggested the Chinese government should invest in planning free cemeteries and issuing funeral law as soon as possible to correct this industry industry's chaos, as well as innovating burial methods and providing free cemeteries and urns for the deceased. This topic has caused heated discussions among Chinese netizens. Vision Times quoted some Weibo netizens asking, "It's good to offer free urns and cemeteries, but there's not enough room for the living, so how can you provide free cemeteries? This proposal cannot be passed. Such a proposal that really thinks about the people will make industrial production stop sucking people's blood. How can this proposal be approved?" Someone commented, "Haha, this is the darkest and most lucrative property in the civil system. This proposal is impossible. Cemeteries in some places have even caught up with housing prices in second and third tier cities." Someone said, "The proposal is good, but the implementation resistance is too great. The first objection to the cemeteries and urns sale will come from those behind having benefits from this. I predict after this, the bosses and stakeholders behind want to devour the expert who made this offer. We don't expect it to be free because it can't be done, but we hope the costs involved can be reduced. Life is already exhausting. Let everyone ease the burden after dying, and the living won't be overwhelmed by excessively high funeral costs." Chinese people living as a property slave, dying as a cemetery slave. NetEase on March 4th published an article saying 2 essential things in life are buying a house and a grave. The newspaper read, "Living with debt for the whole life, still be in debt after death. When living, being a property slave, after death becoming a cemetery slave. Many elderly people are afraid of death, and from the moment they die, how much money needs to be spent? The funeral costs even add up to tens of thousands of yuan." Chinese people say living by house, dying by grave is a necessity. Currently, in many areas, the price of a square meter in a cemetery is higher than a house. The deceased's family even has to pay cemetery management fees every year. Some people think buying cemetery land is too expensive. Sina newspaper once listed 10 exorbitant price tombs, ranked first by the Anluo Cemetery in Xiamen City, Fujian Province, for 8 million yuan, more than $1 million. The price of 78 square meters or 840 square feet in Shenzhen Public Cemetery is 2.2 million yuan or $316,000. A grave in Huasha Cemetery in Chongqing City also sold for 1.88 million yuan or $29,000. In Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and other cities, the price of many cemeteries have reached 200,000 yuan per square meter. Thus, NetEase concluded, death is not the end of liberation, but the beginning of the burden. Expert, Chinese people's living is hard, dying is harder. Responding to the Chinese people's living is hard, dying is harder topic, Kang Jiangguo, a retired lecturer at Yale University, told RFA that since the 1990s, coastal areas such as Fujian and Sichuan were the first wealthy areas, and Wenzhou City was the hardest hit. Kang Jiangguo said, "After the reform and opening up, grave land has become increasingly expensive. The common class could not afford to buy graves. Now it has become very tactless to dig graves in the Qingming period. Chinese people say cemeteries are more expensive than real estate." The retired lecturer said coffin burial is now being restored in rural areas, taking up more land and consuming more wood. The people have to pay a higher price for this. It also causes violence. I saw the Jiangsu province government dig up people's coffins and burn them, arousing public outrage. The evil consequences caused by the Chinese government have reached an irreparable point.